With just 144 days to go before the country heads to the polls on August 13th, 2026, the political temperature is rising, and at the center of all it stands Brian Mundubile. Now, just days ago, Brian Mundubile was arrested and formally charged by the Zambia Police Service, spending a night in custody before being released on bond, an explosive development that has thrust his presidential ambitions even into more sharper focus. But this was not where the storm began. On January 28th, Mundubile emerged as a presidential flag bearer of a faction of the Tonse Alliance led by Dr. Danny Pule, marking a dramatic shift within the opposition. His rise exposed deep cracks within the alliance, splitting into two rival camps, one aligned with Given Luwinda and the Patriotic Front, and the other rallying behind him. His acceptance of the role triggered sharp backlash, with sections of the Patriotic Front threatening disciplinary action against members engaging with what they termed a breakaway faction. Yet even amid internal divisions and now legal battles, Mundubile has remained resolute, positioning himself as a unifier and promising a real Tonse alliance capable of forming government. With time running out and pressure mounting from both within and outside the opposition, the question remains, can Brian Mundubile unite the opposition? And more importantly, is he ready to sort out Zambia's problems? I'll be joined shortly right after this break. Thank you so much for joining us live on Costa tonight. It's DSTV channel 271. It's GoTV channel 20. We are live streaming on our Facebook platform. It's Diamond TV Online, as well as Diamond TV Media Zambia. Costa's cross-examination is now in session. Brian Mundubile, your summit. Good evening.
Good evening, Costa.
Let's start straight from the activities of last week. Aiding, abating, and cancelling. Those are the charges you were slapped with. Shortly after you released on police bond, you described those charges as trumped up, and you claim that you're now more resolved, you will not be intimidated, and you will fight on. Obviously now this is a matter that we are yet to see to proceed to the court. How do you see yourself, going into the election? We see most opposition political leaders facing either court battles or likelihood of incarceration.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Costa. What is important to note is that my arrest was not about justice, but politics. It was all about politics. See, we have a new pattern now in this country, unfortunately, that as long as you have divergent views, as long as you are a critic of President Candidature and his government, they should find something to slap on you so that they arrest you and then disturb your political trajectory. You start trekking to court instead of going around to campaign and market your messages to the citizens. So this is the pattern. It's just the beginning.
Everybody that seemed to be linked to the former ruling party here and there seems to be branded a criminal or corrupt rather. Is the PF, or was the PF really a party of criminal elements? And are you part of that? Because we're also told that even as you try to contest, we are yet to see so many things to come up. There are fingers pointing at you in terms of how dirty you played in terms of road contracts and other things like that, running your business. Should your supporters, should the citizens worry that really you were part of a criminal, party?
Costa, people's guilt or innocence should be proved in court, not on political platforms. What we have seen or what we have heard is mostly on political platforms. If you went to the record and look at the many political cases bordering on corruption, bordering on theft, it's been 5 years now since the APND has been in power. Just count how many people have really been convicted of these charges. So if you look at the pronouncements that are made, even for you, Costa, you must have been worried. If you look at 2021 and 2022, there should have been thousands of people, PF members, in jail today, on account of corruption and thefts, as was alleged by President Candidature. The picture, unfortunately, is totally different. Many of our colleagues are in jail today on political persecution alone. Chilangwa is there for alleged damage to property. Ichitotela is there for alleged arson, Kalumba, and many others. So there may be one or two, maximum four, that face corruption and other charges related to theft. So when you ask me, Costa, for instance, that we belong to a government of thieves, I wish to disagree.
There was no corruption in the PF, and the corruption fight that is going on now is not genuine. You term it political persecution.
Corruption, Costa, has been there from time immemorial. It may not necessarily be up to me to say whether or not there was corruption or there was no corruption in the PF. If there is evidence, and evidence is laid before the courts, and it's proved that in particular cases individuals were involved in corruption, that would be the case. What I'm disagreeing to is where we are all wholesomely charged with corruption, charged with theft, without any evidence adduced to the courts of law. You gave an example, for instance, on the on Brian Mundubile and road contracts. Costa, I was a road contractor from 2006, in about 20 years. I was only in government for 5 years. And many people thought those that are busy pushing these stories would want to believe I only started doing road contracts when I became a minister. When it's the exact opposite. As a matter of fact, most of the major contracts they would refer to were acquired before I even became a minister, before I became an MP. We ran a company that had been operating, it's 20 years now. And I know, Costa, that away from the studios, you were aware, you knew the businesses were running. And the people that were actually in charge of these businesses, the engineers that were running, these companies. So when people come up, they want to liken it to what is happening today. Costa, there is a very big difference. You see, contract management is tried. We built the business to the levels that we did, that we were able to compete with Chinese companies and the rest of them. We really had no reason to do shortcuts, along the way and walk away with money. There was no reason. All we did was just simply work and get paid for.
Should anything arise from this? I saw one of the statements you earlier made. Would you say on this platform that your hands are clean and there's no need for you to worry insofar as your business in this road contract is concerned?
Totally clean. And the supervisors, the client, the government itself, through RRD and local government, will be able to attest to that. Because on all those contracts, of course, I am aware that most of these, all the contracts were actually terminated because the directors of this company, I was one of the directors of these companies, they were unfairly terminated. And they did final accounts on each and every contract. All of them came out positive, meaning that there was no money that was paid on any of those contracts over and above the measured works, as it were. So there is a system. Governments have systems. So if there's any wrongdoing in any case, it does not immediately point to some criminality. Remember that contractors are paid for measured works. And on the interim payment certificates, the engineer can either underpay or overpay because they're just doing estimates. So when they do final accounts on termination, the contract itself speaks to how the contract has been managed.
Are you actively running this business? And again, just to be clear, has the business been audited? What about these allegations we hear that your companies were paid money for works that were not delivered?
Well, to start with, Costa, you know that we had trained engineers, the people that were running. You are aware about the businesses. I was all the time chairman of the board. I simply chaired the board. There was a management team of engineers, accountants, and the rest of them that were running. But I was at the helm of it. I was chairing the board. There was no money at any time that was paid for work that was not done. The company was only paid for measured works, and that remains the position. That will always be the position. You'll be interested to know, Costa, that there's been over 5 audits on each and every contract from 2022. The results are the same. The company was only paid for measured works. So the statements around that, are meant to disrupt our trajectory so that our supporters should have something on their mind to say, oh, we're boss in Bekavekata, there was nothing like that. Yeah.
Before we get into discussing really what the Zambians would want to hear, it's solutions to the problems that beg answers for the over 20 million citizens. You say last week's activities of your arrest were political injustice. Just run us through what happened. We're told you were about to fly out and you were interrupted and stopped at the airport before being brought to Ibex Hill. Again, we are seeing stories flying over that some of those interrogations, again, before you were charged, had issues to do whether you were being accused of trying to engage or you've been discussing or meeting people to cause mayhem in the country. Yeah. Just run us through what happened last week.
Well, in brief, Costa, it was 40 minutes before takeoff. I was in the VIP lounge waiting for my boarding pass and the passport to be stamped. And then 2 gentlemen just walked in and they said they wanted to have a discussion with me. I was with Honorable Kampampi and my protocol officer in my company. And so they asked whether I was comfortable to be interviewed in their presence. I said I was fine. I really had nothing to hide. So they began their interrogation by asking me whether I knew Vauden Findlay. Of course, I confirmed I knew Vauden Findlay.
And these were from the police?
They're Officer of the President. Officer of the President. So they identified themselves and they informed me that there were other officers who were on the way. So they wanted to find out whether I knew Vauden Findlay. I confirmed I did. They asked when last I spoke to him. It had been close to a year, I told them. I last met him in South Africa during President Lungu's funeral. They proceeded to ask whether I knew Moses Katumbi. I said, I know the name. I know the gentleman from a distance. I've never spoken to him before, not even on phone. They asked what I was, sort of discussions I would have with the former president of DRC, President Kabila. I said I'd never spoken to President Kabila before. They asked whether I'd sent an agent to go and visit him. I said I'd not sent anybody to visit President Kabila. Then they asked about my big brother, Xavier Chungu. I said, that is my big brother. I last saw him a couple of months ago, maybe 8 months ago. Sparks Mining. I said, I know the young man. I haven't had any meeting with him. I've seen him, the last time I saw him at the airport. We just greeted. So really, they were just throwing names of people I didn't know. But what was most disturbing, they wondered why I, from time to time, communicate with the Mwata. And remember, in the opening statement, they said they were very worried with my activities. They went on to say I was involved in activities that put this country on fire.
And what sort of activities are those? I
asked them, can you please specify, give me particulars of those activities? They wouldn't. They went on to say, we are aware, we got all the information of the mobilization, what you're trying to do to put this country on fire. At that point, I addressed them in a very serious tone. I told them I'm a very patriotic Zambian. I'm a very responsible leader. I want to lead this country as president. I'll be the last person to think of wanting to put the same country on fire. And I said to them that it was going to be better for them to give me better and further particulars on what exactly they meant that I wanted to put the country on fire. Especially that now that even mentioned names, including that of the Mwata. So from there, they kept on saying they had information. I said, well, if you have information, then I'm happy. You should be able to prove it. Mm-hmm. So they proceeded to access my phones, 3 of my phones, using the equipment, and I was watching them. I said, do as you wish. I have nothing to hide. And of course, I was very quick to remind them that even as they did that, they should know that they were conducting an illegal search on my phones. There was no warrant. There was no arrest whatsoever. What was supposed to have been a general inquiry turned into a thorough search without any warrant whatsoever. And I addressed the officers very seriously. I said I was very worried. And
at that point, you were supposed to have flown out. Did they arrest you from the airport?
They did not. They did not. And they said, we've spent money to buy air tickets. If at all you had anything, I'm very accessible. I'm a member of parliament. You could have simply sent a call out. I was going to come. Did you need to wait for me at the point of exiting the country with all the plans I've made, and then you just come and they wouldn't answer? So it was very unfortunate. But
were you considered flight risk at that time for you to be pulled off your travel?
That would be the last thing. I mean, Costa, even for the officers, I say it to them that as officers of the state, they should be very slow to take unlawful instructions, even if these instructions are coming from the highest office. I mentioned to them that I'm aware of their basic training, and their fidelity should be to the law. The fidelity should be to the Constitution.
What then?
Now, if they're going to, at will, violate citizens' rights like they were doing at that particular moment, it was most unfortunate.
What then, Honorable Mundubile, is the connection between these questions you talk about and the final charge of aiding, abetting, and cancelling?
It was so funny. It was so funny, Costa. The initial drama, we had about 4 hours at the airport and another 5-6 hours before being thrown in police cells. And they show up in the morning without even reference to what they were questioning me over. They brought up a matter which had happened, I think, some 3 years ago, where one of my media people was arrested on allegations that he was behind Mundubile. And they decided to drag me in to say, you're the one that is funding this particular individual, something that I did not even know about. So they decided to bring that up and say, no, we are charging you with aiding and abetting and then hate speech and whatever that was. So that was it. Totally disjointed. So when I said to you, Costa, that it was not about justice, it was just about political persecution.
Let us talk about the trickery or the so-called mingalato that we are now seeing on the political front within what has been the biggest crack of the former ruling party. We have a Chavinga, faction. We had Mao Sampan, all this. In short, we hear of people, even with the vote on the famous Bill 7, that some members of parliament were projects of the current ruling party. You were at one point leader of the opposition, and again, because of these things I allude to, you were ousted. These matters are before the court. Some fingers, again, within this whole political scheme pointed you to be a UPND project that is not genuinely fighting an opposition fight, and you're there as a smokescreen to barely, split the vote or do the dirty works of the UPND. But you call yourself a patriot. How credible are you in terms of a leader to the Zambian people?
My work precedes me. I don't need to adduce any evidence to defend myself against being a project of the UPND. my work alone should speak for me. Costa, by now, you know how many PFMPs have been compromised by the UPND. Their activities in the political space are very clear. Their public announcements, public pronouncements, their debates on the floor of the House are very clear. If you look at my debates on the floor of the House, my political pronouncements out there, there will be nothing whatsoever that would relate me to the UPND. One of their biggest projects was Bill 7. It was Honorable Brian Mundubile with team that took up the challenge. We started fighting Bill 7, as a matter of fact, in March of 2025.
A fight that you lost?
Yes. We lost the fight, but we remain proud that we fought a noble fight because that particular amendment of the Constitution remains unconstitutional.
But others would argue, Honorable Mundubile, that it's just a matter of time, and those of us who are journalists do remember that just a couple of years ago, you were one of those who spearheaded Bill 10 with almost the same contents as Bill 7. Well, what has changed?
Number one, Costa,
what has changed?
I'm happy you brought that up. Remember that constitution making has two parts. There's an aspect of the process and then an aspect of the content. Both the process and the content are equally important. Now, when you look at constitution making, Costa, it's just about the people. So the process is very, very important. Once you come up with a transparent, credible process, thereafter you leave it up to the people. I think that is what is very important. So what I mean is that there are certain principles that you cannot compromise in constitution making.
We've heard this battle, and sadly Bill 7 is water under the bridge. But the key question here, I know your argument is on process.
Yeah.
Now let's talk the contents. Were the contents of Bill 10 and Bill 7 not merely the same? Did you not push for proportional representation? Did you not push for more representation of women and youth in Bill 10, as it were? Did you not push for those reforms?
There are one or two clauses that may be similar, but there is no need for us to jump the gun. The most important thing is there must be dialogue. There must be public participation. So whether the content was similar or not, the issue there was this a people-driven process? That's the thing. So if the process is not transparent, if there's no dialogue in the process, if the people are not engaged, that document, Costa, will not be a people-driven.
Are the contents of Bill 7 bad laws? Are they not progressive? Is Bill 7 or the amendments in terms of content to the new constitution, are they not progressive?
Costa, as a constitutional lawyer, before I even get to the content, who generates the content?
My question
is,
are the contents not progressive? Councillor Mundubile.
It doesn't matter in that particular process. It does not sanitize the process. So, Costa, look, the danger that you face today, if you allow the executive to bulldoze their way and amend the constitution, do you know how dangerous the process, a precedent that will be leaving behind us? Tomorrow, the same government will get back in power because we all accepted this unlawful or an unconstitutional constitutional amendment process. They will now come up, even amend it further. This time around, you will not even talk about how credible the content is, because you'd have allowed them power. You'd have allowed them to do as they wish. What is important in constitution making, Costa? The process and the content are equally important. But most importantly, it must be a people-driven process.
Let's get back to what we were discussing. We're very few months and weeks away to an election on August 13th, and there's huge calls by voters, by citizens, who may seek, alternative leadership, that have been calling for opposition unity, and opposition alliances. This is quickly seeming to elude the political scheme. We've seen now there's the People's Pact Alliance, there's, is it the Zambia We Want kind of alliance, there's now the PF Pamosi Alliance, then there's the Tonse Alliance, there's the United Kwacha Alliance. What really makes you in the opposition selfish and greedy individuals that none of you can look and put Zambia before your greed to lead? Yesterday, we saw another faction of the PF hold a so-called convention, electing Kanso Makebi Zulu as its president. People were hoping that you and him would work together. We've seen this not happening. You had to break away. Is there any likelihood that 4 months to an election this will work, or it's already set for you, you're going it alone with Tonse?
Well, first of all, Costa, it must be made clear that opposition unity is not optional. It's something that is very important for national rescue. That I must make very clear. But at the same time, if we interrogated this unity that we talk about, it seems to be prescribed. I'll give you an example, Costa. I'm president for Tonse. Tonse has 15 political parties and 14 civil society organizations. So Tonse would boast of 29 organizations. So what we have done, Costa, at Tonse, 15 candidates, presidential candidates, have collapsed into one. That already is opposition unity. What I find troubling is that others feel that unity will only be conceived if certain names come together. We're not looking at a two-man race, Costa, between HH and one other opposition. It's possible that we may have up to 9 or 8 candidates. Maybe if we look back, even the time President Candidature was coming into power, I don't think there were only 2 with President Lungu. There may have been 6, 7 others. So the efforts that have been made at Tonse already, I think, demonstrate the will to bring opposition together. We're not talking about one political organization. We're actually talking about 15 political parties coming together. There were 15 aspiring candidates, 15 presidents collapsing into one. But we have made some progress already.
Let's be very honest, looking at the history of elections in this country. The truth of the matter is that there's always an incumbent, party or a candidate versus what would likely be one stronger, contender. Even in elections where we had 16 candidates, be it their constitutional and democratic right, really, even if you're projecting 9 candidates to be on the ballot, honestly speaking, from a punditry point of view, it's not healthy with a 50% plus 1 in the running. And as things stand, that is a very huge split for the opposition. What's the purpose of one getting huge votes with others getting 0, just as long as they're on the ballot?
I know that I share those concerns. It's a democracy, Costa. What we can't guarantee, obviously by now, voters and everybody else have been assessing all of us, to see who may emerge stronger than the others. And what we've been doing in the background is to engage the other political leaders to see whether we can come together. But we can only go so far. If others still feel they can go it alone and be able to give it a go, it becomes very difficult, because then there is no other way that you can force them to join forces. As Tonse, as president for Tonse, I have made one undertaking that I will not stop engaging other political leaders so that together we can consolidate the opposition. But should it be that, people decide to go all the way, we hope that maybe from 15 we can grow to 20, political parties under Tonse, just to reduce the number of participants in that election and improve our chances of winning.
Let's get straight into the real issues. And for me, what is very sad in a democracy that is about to hit 30 years is the fact that you leaders in the opposition, especially those that are coming from this PF battle, are not talking real issues to interrogate the UPND policies, the UPND economics. You're not an opposition that really is providing solutions for the Zambian people, because you're discussing these issues of individualism, injustice, this. I hear these stories, you know, former President Lungu, before he died, he did not even want to see you, so why are you in the offing? Is that really what the Zambian people are looking for? Now, in short, let me ask it this way. Explain to the Zambian people why you're so convinced at this point that you, Brian Mundubile, are the right person to run this country, beyond just removing the UPND, beyond the fact that you were a leader of government business in the opposition. You were a member of parliament, or you're a member of parliament from Porokoso. You're a minister of Northern Province. Who are you? What are your values? Because that's what the Zambians are concerned about, over and above the fact that, yeah, just because you're a member of the PF or president of Tonse, then you should be president.
Well, first of all, Costa, I stand for integrity. I stand for unity. And I also stand for economic dignity. What we have today, the problem statement, is that we have very high poverty levels. Let's start from there. Brian Mundubile is coming into the leadership, not for personal survival, but for national transformation. Brian Mundubile loves Zambia. He wants to put Zambians first. He wants to address poverty. He wants to attend to things to do with wealth and job creation. Mundubile wants to attend to poverty reduction. He wants to attend to reduction in vulnerability. And he also wants to attend to enhancement of human development. So these are major issues, Costa. If you were to break it down, we are just coming out of 3 years of serious load shedding. We are still in a space where the cost of living is so high. We are in a space where Zambians cannot speak freely. Zambians can't even move freely. Zambians cannot congregate freely as political formations to even exchange ideas. We are in an environment where the governance institutions have simply collapsed. Judicial independence is not something you're going to talk about today. Parliamentary independence is not something that you're going to talk about today. So you're talking about a failed state. You're talking about a country that has collapsed.
It's very easy to sit and be an armchair critic, and that's the easiest that anybody in the opposition can do, is point fingers and say and apportion blame and say this was wrong. You were kicked out of government not so long ago because you had the opportunity to do the correct things, and the Zambians felt that you had failed them, and you were kicked out for the same reason. Do you have a blueprint then, Honorable Mundubile, and your FDD and the Tonse Alliance tonight to tell the Zambian people, not just cosmetics and rhetoric here, that you're a man of integrity who believes in human development, you believe in alleviating poverty. The question is how? How are you going to do that? Because it's very easy when the UPND say increase CDF and you say it's not working. It's very easy when the UPND say free education and you say it's the quality of that education. It's very easy when the UPND say we've brought inflation to a single digit and you say, are the Zambians eating that single digit? Give us your formula. That's what the people want to hear, ideas.
Well, to start,
how are you going to alleviate poverty? How are you going to reduce the cost of living?
Well, to start with, Costa, I want to tell you that we just finalized drafting our manifesto, as Tonse. In the next couple of days, we'll be officially launching it. But maybe to pick parts of what is contained in that. Let's start with poverty, okay? Poverty reduction. There's no two ways. The formula to poverty reduction, Costa, is job creation. You've got to create sustainable jobs to properly fight poverty. How are you going to create these jobs? We're not going to bring in new things, Costa. Let's start with what is on the ground. Statistics will show you that the agricultural sector employs between 60 and 70% of our population. So this particular sector is a very, very important sector insofar as job creation is concerned. You know today, Costa, that we have 10 to 12 farming blocks right across the provinces. These were already created. What is required now is investments in these farming blocks. You are not investing to the end. These farming blocks require infrastructure, basic infrastructure, road infrastructure, communication infrastructure, and electricity. It's opened up to the private sector. The design of these farming blocks, Costa, these are actually agro-industrial parks. You are creating farming blocks for value addition with the aim of creating employment. Remember, we have an end in mind. What is supposed to happen? Government intervention is infrastructure in these farming blocks. You attract investments in these farming blocks. These will actually be agro-industrial parks. An average farming block, remember, is 100,000 hectares. This was a government program and already set. The employment per farming block is up to 25,000 workers. This was already worked out. It's not coming from me. We take advantage of what is already there. Out of 10 farming blocks, Costa, you are talking about not less than 250 to 300,000 jobs. What we are talking about there, I want to be very clear, we are talking about poverty reduction. But we have looked at one sector only.
Let's stick to agriculture. When you talk of investment, and you say you don't want to do anything different but to amplify on what is already there, how will you do it? Is this from direct budget support? Because, again, many African countries fall very short of what was agreed in the Maputo Declaration, that at least 10% of the country's budgets must go towards agriculture. The UPND government has set itself under the Presidential Delivery Unit 10 million metric tons that they want to deliver with maize. When you talk of these, industrial parks, you see this happening, what they're doing with Saro and importing mechanization. You see what they're doing now by stopping the importation of fertilizer to produce with United Chemical Fertilizer and beginning to export, and also diversifying from just being mono maize cultured to different things. What difference then are you talking about in this plan?
In this plan, Costa, this is a result-oriented plan. Remember, we have one objective in mind, and that objective is to create employment. We have targets. How many jobs do we want to create? So the government investment coming from the budget basically is on infrastructure in these farming blocks.
What infrastructure do you want to set up?
Roads. These farming blocks need road infrastructure. They need communication infrastructure, because the investors basically, whether local or foreign, will not come where there is no road infrastructure. They will not come where there is no power. They will not come where there is no communication.
And what's the time frame? Because these projects you talk about are not small projects. To build roads, to put power, already in the state in which we're in, we need to diversify because of climate change into other avenues of power. You do this in what time?
The first year you'd have completed the infrastructure within these farming blocks.
From budget support?
From budget support, directly from budget support. And then the investment is coming, from mainly from the private sector. But of course, you've got Zambia National Service, a correction service that can also move in for food security. But the primary objective is job creation. So this particular measure, this particular proposal, Costa, is based on researched information. All it requires is a leadership and political will to implement.
Build infrastructure and build roads. What will these farming blocks, be producing? Because for the longest, one of the biggest challenges we've had, and if you want to say you're going to create jobs, the agriculture sector has not grown because our farmers continue to be peasant farmers who depend on the so-called FISIP and e-voucher handouts, that has never been a loan that has graduated, and everybody looks at the Food Reserve Agency to be their primary and principal market. For the longest, we've been told we can be the grain basket of the region. We are land-linked and so on. We talk about the smuggling going into the Congo and how Congo is our biggest market, but everything that is going into Congo is coming through South Africa, through Zambia. Everything that we're consuming, by and large, including chips and potatoes and vegetables and sauces and everything, is coming from South Africa. So to create jobs means they must be selling, they must be export.
That's right.
That's where we've always felt, under the MMD, under the PF, which you were part of. So you are the same old wine now, trying to dress in a new skin to tell us now you can be different, Mr. Mundubile?
No, first of all, Costa, you've actually answered part of the question. You're talking about importing most of the materials that are used in our supermarkets, our restaurants, and also going to Congo. Congo sits as our ready market. So if you look at the challenges that maybe on monocrop, where our farmers are focused on maize, these farming blocks, the model around these farming blocks, Costa, you have an anchor farmer or you have anchor farmers. These anchor farmers will have an outgrower scheme. So our locals, some of them will be participating at different levels as an outgrower scheme, supported by this anchor farmer. So you've got the issues of finance are partially resolved because these outgrowers are actually supported by this anchor farmer, who also acts as a market. He acts as an aggregator. He's coming in as big brother, to be able to provide a ready market for the crops that are grown in that farming block. So the small-scale farmers don't have to worry to go around market research and so on. There's an aggregator. He picks whatever they produce.
Is this maize we're still talking about?
No, different crops. Different crops, Costa. It doesn't matter what it is. Remember that with this model, most of the farming that is happening now, government really needed to intervene. There is no research. There are no labs on these farms. I mean, our farmers just grow maize because that's what government gives. Now, when you elevate it to that level, farmers will choose the crops that are best suited for the soils in that particular area. Why? Because they've got laboratories in the areas where they're setting up these farms to understand what they can grow and where they would get the best yield. Secondly, there will be mechanization. Some of the challenges, costs that our farmers face, I got this information when I said as minister, is the issue of productivity. Okay, so with mechanization, you will see that our farmers will do more for less. So an average farmer today produces between 2.5 and 3 metric tons per hectare. Okay, because they're using handheld tools. The farmers in Mukushi farming block and other areas are going between 10 and 12 metric tons per hectare. So can you imagine the differences? This is where the formula lies. Even if we talk about...
Let me just get it straight. How will this work if you were to be president? Are you saying you want to do away with things like FISIP and peasant farmers? I mean, you're talking over 2 million, directly supported peasant farmers that supply into FRA and get this direct government support. The farmers, when we had the farming block in Mukushi and Chisamba, most of these have now stopped producing maize in the way they were doing it. They've shifted to wheat. They've shifted to soya beans. Why? It's business. Simply that the price of maize is no longer attractive. So how will you balance this? Is this going to be a private sector-led initiative? You boot away the peasant farmers. What will you do with them?
The farming blocks are already designated. They do not interfere with what the small-scale farmers are doing. We'll continue with FISIP. We'll improve the e-voucher system to try and close the gaps. There's been a lot of thefts in the direct supply system. So we'll enhance the e-voucher system, maintain the farmer input support program. That's a survival line. So what's been happening in Costa, there's supposed to be a graduation process. You go in with FISIP. A farmer should be there for a limited number of years before they graduate to the next level. But you've seen that the number has just been growing because the quantum of support that is given to the farmers is not sufficient to win them off. So what you have is when you have these farming blocks in place, these are operating independent of these small-scale farmers. Remember, like I said in the beginning, the objective of these farming blocks, which will predominantly be private sector-led, will be to create employment. But at the same time, we will continue to look after the small-scale farmers using FISIP, except that this time around, we increase the support to the farmers. If you're giving a farmer 6 bags and you simulate it, 3 years later, you realize that he will not be strong enough to stand on his own. So government is forced to compromise and keep them on the register.
That sounds very interesting on paper, Honorable Mundubile. The reality is, in 4 to 5 months, if you had to be president of this country, what you will find is that you have a debt of over $14 billion, and you have the IMF in our business and other cooperating partners that have a say in the development of some of these programs. We've had to rework things like FISP, like you're talking about. We've had to rework budgets because who left the debt, who ballooned it. The reality on the ground is you will be president of a country that has an annual payoff. Now we're being told by President HH that after the renegotiation we have to be paying $900 million per annum back to the people we owe money. So how will you navigate that in such a very tight fiscal space?
So maybe the question, Costa, is Zambia rich in resources or not? Zambia is rich in resources. It's only poor in outcomes. So we really have to refocus. We have to change the way we look at things. We have to look at, for instance, the net benefit the country is getting from the mining sector. You and I know today that we don't have the best deal from the mining sector. That remains the truth.
Says someone who sat in cabinet and you didn't know that we were endowed with resources and that mining could get us a better deal. Now you're telling us because you want to be president?
No. There are many things to look at, Costa. I'll take you back. If you look at the Bonawasa times, just slightly before that, the mining sector is an interesting one because the prices for the minerals keep changing. There comes a time when you can do very little in that particular sector. Sometimes you literally have to beg investors to stay on and leave the mines on care and maintenance. Where we are today, because of changes in technology, there's a huge demand for mineral resources. This is the best time this economy can recover if you have the leadership in place that will have policies that will work for Zambia. This
is what the current leadership is doing. They took over mines that were on care and maintenance. They took over mines that were shut down because of your kick out as the PF. You were a lawyer yourself. You went against even simple mediation or arbitration clauses, and you kicked out investors. Mining investors were about to pull out. Now you see mines reopening. You see reinvestment in this that you're talking about. You're talking of $12 billion worth of investment in the last 4 years in Zambia. You're talking a target of 3 million metric tons of copper for the next 10 years and shy under 1 million. What baffles me is leaders like yourselves who were walking the corridors of power. Today you can claim that you now have the blueprint. When you had the opportunity, you were leader of opposition. You were a member of parliament. We never heard you speak these ideas when you were in power. Why now? It sounds better when you're in the opposition.
Well, Costa,
it sounds better.
You must be very prudent. Don't get excited with figures that our colleagues are throwing about.
I'm not excited.
No. Let me give you an example.
About things that are on the ground.
Let me give you an example. For instance, it's very easy to throw 3 million tons of copper here and there. Costa.
It's also very easy to say you now have the blueprint. Costa. Like I'm asking you, how many tons did the PF produce when they were in power?
Do you know that when the highest levels of production were around 880 metric tons, we're still there? Did you know that? Did you know that we haven't improved in terms of production? Forget the stories. We should forget the stories that when PF was in office, Vedanta shut down, and now it's open. KCM is open. We should forget the stories. I'll come to that.
That you kicked out, Glencoe out of Mopani, and it was on care and maintenance. All that should be forgotten.
And now Mopani has been given as a gift, as a birthday gift to somebody's friends. Is that what you wanted? You take it out from the Zambian people and you give it as a birthday present? Is that what is best for Zambia? No, Costa. Let's talk about the 3 million tons. But to ask the mining houses, this figure should have come from individual mining houses saying, in the next so many years, this is what we're able to do. This was a figure that came from President Hakainde Hichilema and Musokotwane, not necessarily the people that are doing the actual mining.
So if
it's a figure in the air.
So this is a 10-year projection, and if you believe that this is not workable by 2031, what is your blueprint for mining? I'm
still on the 3 million tons. Costa, if you remember, in 2021, when Comrade Musokotwane on the 30th of October 2021 came on the floor of the House to give his budget speech, he talked about the incentives that he was giving to the mining sector. That included reducing mineral royalty tax from 6% to 3%. That also made mineral royalty tax deductible. He himself said that measure was going to result in a loss of about $600 million. Okay? So we asked him a question. Why are we giving away $600 million when you, Comrade Musokotwane, said you inherited a bankrupt economy? He said, we're doing this to encourage the investors to ramp up production to 3 million tons within 10 years. We are 5 years down the line, Costa. Do you know that we haven't moved in terms of production? We have moved from maybe 880, which was in the last government. We are now at 890. In the meantime, every year we're giving up $600 million.
But granted, you know that we were hit with issues of the power problem that affected production.
Costa, the power problem can be handled separately. We can talk about that.
The challenge I have with you,
we can talk about that.
The challenge I have with you, our leaders and politicians, is that whenever you're in the opposition, you want to make everybody in government seem as if they are doing the wrong thing. And I want us to talk realistically with the Zambians. You believe that if you came into power in August, would you ramp up this to what?
No, first of all, because you threw these figures at me. No, I want to be able to dissect
these figures.
Let me tell you that the 3 million tons is fiction.
It's fiction.
3 million tons is fiction.
What is realistic?
The infrastructure.
What is realistic for you under the current power framework? Under the current status quo of an IMF and investment and all this? How will you engage? Because one of the biggest challenges was that there was a lot of policy shift. I think between 10 years we had changed or shifted policy almost 13 times. I attended all these indabas. What will be your policy if the mining investor is listening to you tonight? What will be your policy and what would be your target in terms of projection within the current power setup?
Number one, there must be a win-win situation. There must be a win for the investor. The investor must get a decent return on his investment, but there must be a net benefit to the Zambians. We will not feed on figures and statements of how production will be ramped up. Already, Costa, we acted to our detriment and gave out incentives. We gave out incentives to the mining sector. 5 years down the line, there's been no increase in production. So what will be your policy,
Honorable Mundubile? You will come and reverse this? What is the TONSE and FDD policy on mining?
Well, first of all, my own view was that there was no need for government to reduce mineral royalty tax from 6% to 3%.
What is the FDD policy going into this election? Will you come and reverse this?
I'll not preempt what's coming in the manifesto, Costa. We'll be launching the manifesto soon. Let me not go ahead of that. But the principle behind is that there must be benefit from the mineral wealth to the Zambians. We will not feed on figures in the air. Somebody comes to you and says, I'll produce 3 million tons. Let me access these incentives.
You of all people must
we've lost $3 billion.
You of all people must understand
in 5 years, Costa,
that mining is a business of long-term investment and requires certainty.
Yes.
At a time like this, every investor is looking to the policies of whoever wants to be president, because it matters most. For you to put $1 billion into a green or brownfield project, to put $1 billion into a pit, it's not small money. So what you say here and tonight really matters for sustainability's sake and for certainty's sake of huge investors watching tonight.
Exactly.
And we cannot be saying we're not sure, or we will not, it's a secret, we will not say only.
No. We're not talking about being sure. I want us to move step by step. What to not do, Costa, for instance, is to pretend to have brought in investors when we're just giving away mines as birthday gifts. Let's not run from that.
Will you come and create a shock and chase the current investors? Will you come and create a shock and change policy?
No. We're not going to chase the investor. But what we're saying to our investors is that the sovereign wealth of this country must also benefit the Zambians.
So how do we reach a win-win, according to you?
For instance, look at, I'm concerned about this $600 million that was given away every year. We've lost $3 billion in terms of a reduction that was the incentives that were given by the minister. In the meantime, on the production side, you see, Costa, what normally happens, if the IMF is giving us money, they normally set milestones, key performance indicators. When you do this, you qualify for this. In our case, we gave out these incentives without giving these mining houses any incentives.
So you'll come and do away with these incentives?
Well, we'll have to renegotiate them. We'll have to give them milestones. If we had given these mining houses milestones to say you qualify for a further 1% when you reach here, most likely you would have beaten 1 million tons by now.
Let's quickly move to health, which is a critical aspect of a country. I mean, the country needs to be healthy. Right now, the country is engulfed in a huge debate. I want to know what your take is and what, again, your approach as president and the Mundubile administration would be on international foreign relations. The Trump administration really has such turbulence on current economic diplomacy. The pullout of USAID across the world is problems for Africa, for Zambia. Jobs have been lost. Healthcare is at its brink. We are now being given a contract with a gun to our head, put in $350 million, plus data for the next 5 years, and concessions on certain mineral rights for us to get about $1.5 billion. We are still negotiating and haven't signed this. If this contract were on your table as president, how would you approach it?
Well, first of all, Costa, you must understand that the health sector is a security issue. And we'll have to ensure, as a country to start with, that we handle it with a lot of prudence. So what has happened now is a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call in that Zambia has to slowly move away from being donor-dependent on health to make sure that our sovereignty in health is really what we advance. But we are where we are now, and what do we do? We have a lot of challenges in the health sector. There's been a lot of problems in the health sector, and you would not blame the donors for taking up certain measures in trying to ensure that they protect their money. They have to protect the money that they give to us. Even if it were you, Costa, you would not be putting money in this particular sector or to this helping out this country that can't secure it. It's not going for an intended purpose. So number one, we support these audits. We support the audits, and these audits should go to strengthen the systems within the health sector to ensure that we reduce corruption, we reduce thefts, as it were, so that the cooperating partners putting into this particular sector also appreciate that their objectives are realized.
How do we trust you, Honorable Mundubile? Again, I'm sorry, because I need to remind you of history, that under the time you served in the PF, the Ministry of Health became one of the most lucrative ministries for people to go and seek tenders, and people became instant billionaires for getting money out of the Ministry of Health for things that they never even supply. You know the story is true, and like you're saying, donors, the Global Fund, they had to ask for $1 million refund for things that did not work. Yes, our Ministry of Health has been riddled with scandal after scandal, ZAMSA and so on. So just 2 weeks ago, when the president was appointing the new Minister of Health, he was saying that we need to stiffen punishment and it must be non-bailable. State Councillor John Sangwa just last week on this program was saying the same thing, that I think it must be equated to sabotage. How do you intend to look at healthcare in terms of safeguarding medicines, ZAMSA, theft, corruption, ensuring that life and lives are saved?
Yes, of course, like you pointed out, there were a lot of challenges in the health sector, either during the PF regime, That was the reason why ZAMSA came into being. The idea was to remove the procurement of drugs from the Ministry of Health and place it under ZAMSA. I still feel that there's still some more work to be done in terms of reforms for procurement systems under ZAMSA. We'll have to ensure that the processes and the management of ZAMSA is very transparent. I know that it's a new institution. They've been given a lot of responsibilities. There's been a lot of push and pull between Ministry of Health and ZAMSA. You know that that particular unit in terms of procurement was at Ministry of Health. It now went to ZAMSA. So clearly, systems had to settle and reconcile and synchronize. Going forward, we, like I said earlier, need to come up with reforms in the procurement systems at ZAMSA to give confidence to the stakeholders and also give confidence to the citizens, knowing that even the budget allocations given to these particular institutions are properly utilized.
Back to my earlier question, Zambia still has this deal on the table with the US. We want your voice as an aspiring leader. How should we approach this deal by the US?
Well, first of all, the negotiations on that particular contract should be within the law, because there are certain conditions that I've heard that may be outside the law. The information, personal information of citizens must be protected. I think that is non-negotiable because the law says so. On the other aspects, you have a 5-year deal versus a 25-year period within which the other party is to benefit. I think there's need to reconcile the two. If we got 1.5 billion, it's for a duration of 5 years. But why is it that the other party to the contract would like to derive benefit for the next 25 years, 20 years over and above the period that the other contract will have expired? So in short, the 1.5 billion is supposed to be a duration of 5 years. We're supposed to repay that within 5 years. But the benefit in terms of minerals and other things would go on for 25 years. And I think that's where the unfairness comes in.
Should we sign? If we don't sign, people die. How do we get out of this one?
Well, I know that in government systems, proper government systems, there are always people charged with responsibilities to negotiate. I know that the American government has been supportive of this particular sector for a very long time. They've poured in billions of dollars in the health sector, for which we remain grateful and hope that they'll continue that support. They actually understand what would happen if this support stopped now. So coming from that background, I know that there should be a win-win situation between our government and indeed the US government. So for me, two issues are on the period. The 25 years, on the other hand, may be too long. It could be negotiated downwards. The issue of data protection, that is law. That is non-negotiable because it's part of our law. So you have hope that a better deal can be struck. We should not walk away with this negotiation. A better deal can be struck out of this. As we conclude, let's get into one critical sector, because everything that you talk about, whether it's your industrial parks or your farming blocks, they will require roads, they will require power. Power has become a huge issue, the energy aspect. The UPND government is now talking about open access in terms of both petroleum products as well as issues to do with electricity. Again, I say this in terms of, if you are standing or you're telling the people today that you want to be president, these are the challenges you will find. These are the policies you will find in September, that you have a war that has broken out in Iraq and Israel, and the Straits of Hormuz, which supplies 70% of the world's bulk oil, has been affected. Those problems will not go away 4 months from now. You will find open access policies. You will still find that we're not yet out of the woods in terms of the insufficiency of hydro, power, production, plus the intentions to grow copper production will require power. Enhanced farming will require power. More economic activities will require power. How will you look at your energy plan? Yes, so to start with, Costa, I just want to say that when you look at open access, both for electricity and oil, these amendments were actually made when I was chairman of the ERB. We proposed these amendments when we had challenges with importation of power. You remember between 2014 and 2015, we experienced some load shedding and we're actually importing power. So we made amendments to the ERB Act and indeed the Electricity Act. So even as we talk about this open access, this has been there. These particular amendments to the Constitution, to the Acts, were done 8 years ago. So they're not new at all. I've heard people go about them as if they've been there. Now, if we look at the crisis in the petroleum subsector, let's go back, Costa. Are the problems happening in the Middle East, were they at any time in the past foreseen or anticipated? The answer is yes. As a country, how did we prepare for such eventualities? So one of the measures that were taken way back was to introduce the almost 2,000-kilometer pipeline terminating at Indeni, because the commingled fuel that would be imported that time lasted us 3 months. So what used to happen in the past, whenever there was a threatened situation of war in that area, you imported bulk fuel, but you also imported finished products. The idea was to make sure that the country was always secure. So when the use of the pipeline was converted by the UPND government, we raised concerns on the floor of the House. We actually raised very serious concerns as to what would happen if war broke out in some of these areas that are supplying fuel. So for me, as a solution, Costa, we needed to really look at modernizing Indeni as a refinery. Where it is there, it's a separator. I know that there are some adjustments and modifications that can be made to it so that it's able to process more than one type of crude oil. The challenge that was there then, there was one specific type of crude oil, which was mainly commingled fuel, that it could separate. Without a facility like that, it's very difficult, because these are factors outside our control.
That's a long-term plan. But if you had to be president, one of the biggest things you will find is still, as legacy, there's still huge debt being owed to AMCs. You're talking over $400 to $500 million worth of money being owed in terms of fuel supplies. And part of the challenge now, the president was meeting with OMCs last week, is because they import and they sell, directly at the moment. Government has no storage. What would be your immediate measures?
Well, of course, when you look at...
Would you change the procurement structure?
Not at all. The procurement structure can still continue. But what we should be concerned with, this war that has broken out is not the last. The storage facilities that are dotted around the provinces, there is need to build more storage facilities around the country, because clearly the instability in the countries abroad will definitely continue affecting us. So the only solution is to try and elongate the period that we can survive without any fresh importation. And that can only be through increased storage.
What about the talks of Africa looking inwards? I mean, for the longest we've been talking about what we can do with Angola. There's been fresh injection now into the Tazama pipeline. I was seeing a story just today that some African governments are looking now at the Dangote oil refinery. Shouldn't we be looking inwards at us?
Of course, ultimately that's a solution. Ultimately, Costa, that is a solution. If we can get oil from within Africa, why not? But of course, this is something that would take a very long time. In the immediate, the pipeline exists, Indeni exists. We can do some modifications, some improvements, some enhancements, and ensure that at any given time we have a minimum of 90 days buffer of stock going forward.
We've touched petroleum. Let's go into the other energy side of it, power, electricity. This government has been talking electricity diversification, going into solar and an energy mix that they are preaching, part of the other open access. How do you intend to look at some of these things? Are they a continuation? Is it a right way to go? Will you go different? Others argue that we should also be maximizing on some of the current coal deposits we have.
Exactly that. As Tonse, the focus will mainly be on coal. We know that this is sustainable.
Regardless of the concerns for climate and environmental protection?
We can do those matters along the way, but this is very, very important. The baseload power is key. Other interventions, other forms of energy, of course, can come in. You're talking about wind energy, you're talking about solar energy and others. But the baseload, that would mainly come from coal and hydro. Those are very, very, very important. I know that we have not yet fully exhausted the potential that lies within Zambia insofar as hydropower generation is concerned. You know, when you go up north, you've got, for instance, the Lumangwe, you've got the Chifubu. So just within the northern region, you will have over 650 megawatts potential. There was a project that was being carried out along the Luapula Basin, and that was about 1,200 megawatts. So these are some of the areas where we have to quickly move in and ensure that these projects are implemented as we look at the thermal plants using coal. Then we can talk about solar. Then we can talk about wind energy and other forms of energy mix. Of course, the open access under the electricity subsector has been very progressive. Like I said, these particular laws were amended around about 2018, 2017. The idea there really was that even the private sector, the power producers, should be able to wield their power to the various markets. We need to look at transparency within which this open access is managed. Sometimes there can be abuse of ZESCO assets by the private players, supported by those in power. So really, even as this particular policy is working, we need to look at it. We need to look at it seriously to ensure that people are not taking advantage of these particular policies to the detriment of ZESCO.
I know we cannot touch everything, and we should have more time to debate and test your manifesto and your policies which are yet to launch. But in any campaign, people have now verified their voters' credentials physically and online. They have to make a choice, and you're telling them it could be 9 choices they have to look at. Campaign messages are very clear. Donald Trump would say he wants to make America great again. Barack Obama says, yes, we can. Hakainde Hichilema says, Bali will fix it. What are you telling the Zambian people?
What I'm telling the Zambian people is that under Tonse, we want to build a Zambia where every Zambian counts. We want to bring a Zambia where we stand united, a Zambia where citizens will not be overly conscious about their ethnicity, where we all live as Zambians and not divided by circumstances of our birth rather. So we look forward as Tonse to saving this country so that Zambians can thrive in their various endeavors. We want to give freedom to the Zambian people. Costa, freedom is the most important thing. We want to protect human rights. We want you Zambians to know that the Zambia under Tonse would be a Zambia where justice will be dispensed as fairness. We want to lead a Zambia where the political atmosphere should not be a source of our differences at personal or household level. We want to bring about a Zambia where the young people today you call illegal miners, should migrate into a formal sector of mining and be called small-scale miners. We want a Zambia where youths who take center stage right across the economy to be able to drive this economy forward. So this is what we promise the Zambians. And I want to say to the youths, this is not a promise. These are deliverables. Just click it.
Thank you so much for coming through to Costa's cross-examination, and we wish you all the best. The clock is on and counting. 144 days to go. We'll see you on the ballot.
Thank you, Costa.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure.
That wraps up this week's edition of Costa's cross-examination. My guest, the aspiring candidate on the FDD and Tonse Alliance ticket Honorable Brian Mundubile. It's 144 days and counting, and this is where you get all the election nuggets and updates. We'll be with you all the way till August 13th, 2026. Costa cross-examination is now adjourned.